In this episode of the Young Family Podcast, my wife and co-host Carolyn makes a confession that will change the way that you listen to this very show. Plus, we'll talk about our triumphs and struggles in parenthood of the last month, as well as plugging a couple of other podcasts that we think you'd like to listen to. All of this and more in this episode of the Young Family Podcast. Hi, I'm Erik Young, full-time dad of two and an entrepreneur. That's right, I try to do both things full-time. Smart, right?
Hello, I'm Carolyn. I'm the wife to this handsome co-host and the mother of our two children. I work full-time on top of being a mom and would do anything for a nap.
Together, we're a husband and wife team podcasting about the joys, heartbreaks, and sometimes hilarious tribulations that make up the journey of parenthood. This is the Young Family Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to this episode of the Young Family Podcast. My name is Erik Young, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host,
the TBC.
How you doing, TBC?
Doing well.
Living large?
Yeah, ready for episode 2 of the season.
Episode 2 of this new era. That's correct.
Yes.
And a fantastic episode it shall be. Do you want to preview what we're going to talk about?
I think we should.
All right. Well, before we get into the preview, let's stop for a moment, and we're going to talk about our sponsors of this episode. Do you know that we have sponsors now?
We do?
Yeah, but not really. So, as you guys may have heard from the intro, I am an entrepreneur, and I own a company called 7 Mangoes Creative, which is a digital media company based out of Orlando, Florida. And you know what? That's who's sponsoring this show. That company, which is owned by me. So the Young Family Podcast is brought to you by 7 Mangoes Creative. Hey, wait a second. Do you own a business? Do you have a side hustle? Are you an entrepreneur? Do you need video and or digital media marketing for that business? All you need is 7 Mangoes. Get in touch with us. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, or simply visit 7mangoes.com. 7 Mangoes Creative, your digital media marketing solution. Now we can talk about what is going to happen in this show. You ready, TBC?
Ready. All
right. You're going to have a confessional segment. Are you ready for that?
I think so.
That's how we're going to start the show. Carolyn has a big confession. You listen, I don't want to build it up or make it into anything that is earth stopping, but I think that it's important that we talk about what Carolyn is going to talk about, because I think that it will kind of change the lens that people listen to or experience this show through. So we're going to talk about that first. We are also going to do a little segment on our success of the month as parents. It's hard for us to brag, but we're going to talk about how we got our eldest son, Jackson, off the pacifier. And that was a doozy, wasn't it?
It was.
Then, just so that we can be served an adequate portion of humble pie in this very episode, we're going to flip the script and talk about what our struggle of the last month has been. And that has been also dealing with our oldest son and his tantrum phase that he's going through.
Yeah, I think that some refer to as the terrible twos or the three-nager. I'm going to say that he is at his testing twos phase. He's just testing his limits, and we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, exactly. We have to get all up into that when the time comes. And then finally, we're going to wrap up the show with a new little thing that we've decided to do, which is, plug some things. So our plugs of the week, if you're listening to this show, that means that you obviously have some sort of an affinity for podcasts and consuming them. And so we have a couple of podcasts that we would like to recommend to you. If you are a parent or not a parent, these might be of interest to you. So certainly stick around till the end of this episode so that you can hear that plug. With that said, Carolyn, are you ready to just get into it?
Because let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, normally we like to keep things all laughy up in this show.
Oh, because we're so funny.
Because we are clearly the most hilarious people we know. But we want to talk about something serious. You showed me a video recently and you were like, husband, I think you need to you need to see this. It kind of puts into context the way that I am and the way that I feel a lot of my life. Can you talk to the listeners a little bit about what that video was that you shared with me?
For sure. I mean, I guess my biggest or my confession for today is just the fact that I have anxiety. And with me having anxiety, it, comes even more to life as a parent. And, I am sharing the fact that I have anxiety because we want this podcast to be real. We want to be relatable and we want to try to help others. And I really feel that kind of getting this out there for those who do listen who maybe could relate or who could just maybe share some insight if they are also struggling.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that I have anxiety. I've always had anxiety and, I'm kind of still learning how to deal with it on a daily basis. And now that I have children, I have,
It's a whole new set of struggles.
It's a whole new set of struggles.
Right.
And so anyways, I saw this video on YouTube. I honestly don't even know what it's called, but it's about this girl who typically makes funny videos. She's very humorous. She kind of became famous overnight, and she continues to make funny videos daily. But
Speaking of plugging, we probably should have plugged her specifically, but
I know.
We'll do the research. Maybe we'll drop that in the comments of the podcast.
Yeah, so I believe she's based actually in Florida as well, and she just kind of talked about how she has anxiety. And it literally, watching this video was like everything that I feel on a daily basis, from like driving in the car to, being, in a crowd of people or sending my kids to school, or whatever the case may be. Like everything that she was like describing was how I feel. And it was like nice to say to you, watch this video. This is kind of what I try to communicate with you about what goes through my mind on a daily, basis. Because
the video was even addressed to like her partner, basically, right? It was like the exact sort of dynamic of you to me. It's like, I am a person with anxiety and you are the person closest to me that I need to know, or I need you to know more about what this is and what my struggles are like. And I'll tell you what, I've always, we are coming up on our 5-year wedding anniversary, and we were together for 2 years before that. So we have spent a large portion of our adult lives together. I've always known you were an anxious person. We may have even gone so far as to several times formally said you have anxiety. You have mentioned that people in your family also have anxiety. And, I definitely acknowledged that that is a condition and that, it's an actual thing and it's a thing that you have. But there was something about you showing me that video that has honestly made it more real for me since. And it's helped. I think it's straight up helped, because now when I see the effects of anxiety happening in you, I have that perspective. But I want to say I also really appreciate the fact that you are taking our tiny little platform that we have, which is the Young Family Podcast, and using that to just kind of like lift yourself up and be really forthright about your anxiety. Because I think the biggest thing here is, whether you are a parent or whether you are just anyone else, a non-parent, the biggest thing is we are, as individuals, are in charge of whether or not there is a stigma about these things. And if you have anxiety, there is nothing wrong about talking about it. There's nothing wrong with owning it, because I think that the only other alternative at that point is that it owns you. You know what I mean? And I think that that goes with a lot of mental conditions, but that's a whole nother conversation. So talk about it. And Carolyn, I'm so grateful, and I'm really, really, proud. I'm beaming with pride, almost in a parental sort of way, that you are talking about this, because I think that that does it takes a lot of strength, and you are owning it as opposed to letting it own you. So hell yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that the video that I saw that I passed to you was just like communicated better than I could.
Right.
And it was just kind of
because let's face facts, you're kind of awful at communicating.
You think so? I'm the best. I feel like I almost over communicate, if that's a thing. But
joking. I kid.
But I just a lot of times, because people who don't have anxiety or don't have like the same feelings that I do don't understand why I'm anxious about
things you shouldn't be anxious about. Or again, it's who's to say what you should or should not be, but you cannot help but have anxiety about.
Right. I mean, like things that like people wouldn't think about on a daily basis, that it's just like normal to them, or like they're not like scared. Like if I were to say, oh, like I'm scared to go to a movie theater, or I like when I go to a restaurant, I like to know where my exits are, or I like to know like all those kind of things. If people don't understand how I feel because they don't have those same things, they just say, oh, like it's fine, like just everything's fine, like
right.
Nothing's gonna happen, just like relax. Like that drives me crazy, because yes, I know that I should just relax. Like if I could, obviously that would be my first step.
Yeah, that's step number one.
So
like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. And again, I as your spouse, I know that I've done that, and I do even continue to do that. And, I feel remorseful now about that, because it's been absolutely more than, numerous times that I've asked that of you. And, like I said, I do think that, sharing that video with me definitely helped for me to have a different perspective that, like, maybe I can kind of dial it back with that rhetoric in those heated moments. Because, obviously you could relax, or you would relax if you could. Do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I actually
Hi guys.
Sorry.
Good
Sorry.
God.
Sorry. Well, I found out who she was. I found her.
All right.
So to search for her is Juggling the Jenkins. And
Juggling the Jenkins?
I believe Jenkins is her last name.
Is it J-I-N or J-E-N?
No, it's Jenkins.
Okay.
Juggling the Jenkins.
The Jenkins.
But anyway, so she has a whole bunch of funny things.
Right.
Funny videos.
And then she goes,
but for this,
hits the brakes,
for this
flips
one,
the script,
for this one particular
gets hella
one,
serious.
she just talks about anxiety.
Right.
So I found her, so I wanted to share.
That's Juggling the Jenkins. I guess she was on YouTube, right?
Yeah,
you can find her on YouTube. Google it, whatever, you'll find it. Mm-hmm. So with all that said, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions, like interview style? Because essentially, we're going to treat you like as the first guest here, because Carolyn, this is really the transformation of the show, I think. You are not just a parent. You're a parent with anxiety. And then that means I am a co-parent that has a spouse and you have anxiety. And so that really does come into play with everything. And it is magnified, in the realm of parenthood. So let me ask you a couple of questions. For someone who does not have anxiety, obviously, or does not have the actual condition, how would you describe it? What would you say to someone that just doesn't even think that it's an actual condition?
I mean, I almost have like constant like worry. I overthink everything way too much. It's just, no matter what it is, no matter how simple it is, I always have like 10 other layers that I think about or that I plan for, to help me feel better or to kind of help me get through it. And so now with like parenting, it's almost like it's just more things to think about and to worry about.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question, which, the legitimate condition of anxiety in which you are afflicted, what do you think is the number one way that it affects you as a parent? What do you think is like the most like prevalent way that it affects you?
I think that sometimes I can't just like be in the moment. like I can't just like enjoy being at a park or being at like, you know, an activity. Like I just worry about like the what if. And I think that it has gotten worse since I've had children because our world as a whole has becoming a lot more unstable maybe. I don't know, with all like the shootings or like, you know, all they like the terrorism. It's like, and maybe it's because more like the news.
Certainly, that's not helping.
Yeah. So maybe it's just more like known now.
Because you can also make a case that it's one of the safest times to be alive too. You can, but I mean, I see what you're saying, and certainly as a person with anxiety, if you are presented with all this information from sensationalized news, yeah, things seem horrible, and that can really affect you on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah. So I just think that I just sometimes like. I wish that I was more spontaneous. I wish that I, you know, wouldn't have like the fear of getting on a plane and dealing with turbulence. Like, you know, like friends going on like a trip. Like I have to be like, oh, like I don't really know if I want to do that because I'm going to be terrified for 2 hours. That's going to embarrass me in front of like my friends or, you know.
Well, that was something that also affected you before you became a parent too.
Right, I know, but
I totally hear what you're saying about like that.
But even when we flew with Jackson 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't even hold my son in the airplane.
Right.
Because I needed to just focus on me and to calm myself down on the plane. And I was like, you need to take care of Jackson and, you know, on this plane because like I am not going to be able to.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if you weren't there, I would just have to like make it work.
Yeah,
but with having you there,
right.
Yeah, it would just be harder.
And going back to what you said about not being in the moment, and I mean, like, I'm not trying to like twist the knife or anything because obviously these are situations that you and I went through personally. But like, you know, whereas that would have been a moment that you cherished and that you really enjoyed, like, oh, our little 8-month-old boy is on his first plane ride. You know, instead of really being able to like soak that in and cherish that as a precious moment in his life, it was a moment that instead was kind of taken over by anxiety.
For sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, I can sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, that's got to be hard, but I don't know. I can't fathom how that is. And I think that sucks. It sucks that I can't even wrap my mind around it. And I hope that people listening, hopefully, you know, this can kind of give a little bit of perspective to the people that you may have in your life that deal with anxiety as well. My next question is, and obviously I know the answer, but this is for the benefit of the listeners. What have you chosen to do as a parent with anxiety? What is your plan of dealing with it in life moving forward?
You know, I don't know, honestly. I mean, like, my goal has always been to not be, like, medicated. I don't, you know, want to be on anxiety medication.
Right.
So I try to, you know, take a step back, breathe. You know, my family's always recommended, like, yoga, like, you know, like, breathing, like, you know.
All this, you know, stuff. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you have to make time in order to help you kind of like settle down and like take a deep breath and kind of reevaluate and say like, you know, I pray, like, you know, I always like, you know, just I like find the strength in, you know, in that. So it's just about taking one day at a time. I have anxiety. It's true. You know, I don't want to hide that I have anxiety. I don't want to like pretend, you know, to try to tell myself, you know, don't worry about it. It's just about like knowing that I have it and trying to tackle each situation, you know, as best as I can to enjoy life on a day-to-day basis without having to worry so much.
I have a ton of respect, and let me even take a step back and say that anyone that chooses to utilize the medication that is available to individuals with anxiety, I have all of the support and respect in the world for those individuals.
Of course. I mean, I know that I mean, and I'm not saying that I don't need it. I mean, I have family who has given me certain things that could maybe help me relax a little bit more during those situations. Right now with me breastfeeding, I'm trying to not use those like right now. But I'm not saying that maybe I wouldn't try something in a few months, like when I stop breastfeeding. And I know medication is there and it does help people. I'm not knocking that at all.
Yeah.
But for me, I've just I have always just tried not to.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I take it, or the way that I've always kind of understood it, is that you're going off of inner strength. Everything that can just be conjured from within. And, you talked a little bit about spirituality and prayer. And, whether you are a spiritual or religious person with anxiety, it all kind of boils down to the same thing for me. If you elect not to be medicated or go that route, that really your only other alternative is just to work within your inner strength and the things that you can conjure within yourself. And I want to put it very simply. I respect everyone that has to deal with the additional dimension of stress on their life that is the condition of anxiety. So whether or not you elect to be a medicated individual to overcome that or not, I respect the fact that you just have more to deal with than the average individual that is not afflicted with anxiety. So, but Carolyn, that just means that, I got a heck of a lot of respect for the fact that, you deal with what you deal with, and that you've just decided to go the route of like, I'm going to try and just, handle this with the things that I have, which is just me and my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. Yeah. I mean, there are good days and then there are bad days, all depending on like the situation. And I still try to get myself to go out of my comfort zone, because I want to give my children like the experiences that they should, and my family has always said like, take the good from your mom, take the good from your dad, and like leave the rest behind. And that's like what I truly want to give to our children too. Like, take the good from me, take the good from you, and try to leave the rest behind. And it's like,
what about me should they be leaving behind? It's all good.
Oh.
Take it all, kids.
This is a different...
I mean, I've dropped a bag of gold in their laps. What are they leaving behind? Anyway, keep going.
Mr. Perfect. So with anxiety, I know that that's necessarily nothing that I can control. But sometimes, like, when I see Jackson, and I know he's just kind of, like, learning and, like, seeing everything on like, his life. And sometimes I see him get a little bit, like, maybe anxious for a 2-year-old. I don't know what I'm looking for. But that makes me sad. Like, I don't want him to have, I mean, I know that he is going to be scared and he's going to be anxious as he learns, what's good, what's bad in his life. But, I try to always, like, when I'm, like, just for example, like, on a plane, I'd be like, oh, man, like, this plane is so fun. And, like, try to, like, fake it.
We're above the clouds.
Like, this is, ooh, like, bumps, like, roller coaster, cool.
Woo!
So it's, like, I try to fake it as much as I possibly can because, if he's scared of flying, I want him to be scared of flying, but I don't want him to be scared of flying because of me. Like, because, like,
because
he
just, like, kind of picked up on that.
Right.
Like nurtured into it versus nature, which, in my opinion, would be his genetic inheritance of your anxiety. In which case, that is something that he's already been dealt, and we can't really prevent.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, and I would want him to embrace it, and I would try to, like, teach him how to, cope with it moving forward. But
well, to that point, if I may interject, I would say that when he gets older, regardless, I hope that you don't fake, who you are. I hope that as soon as he's old enough to, like, really absorb and appreciate, like, what a condition like anxiety is, that we're, again, honest with him, just like we are with our listeners right now, that like this is just a thing that you have and that you deal with on a daily basis, and it's not wrong, or it's just something different.
Yeah.
Because there's a heck of a lot of other conditions out there too, of people that he knows, that he's related to and whatnot, that like, that you need to, be able to understand and take in and treat that person, as he would want to be treated.
For sure. I mean, we're just, we're all imperfect, and it's just about, being the best you. And I have anxiety, but I do my best to still put myself out there as much as possible for...
That you do. And to that end, I want to ask you one last question. And this will kind of be like a parting thought. Now that, who knows how many people are actually listening to this, let alone parents, let alone how many people are parents with anxiety. But let's assume that there might even just be one that's listening right now. What would you say to a parent with anxiety as your parting thought?
I mean, I guess I would just say that, like, people have anxiety, and I have anxiety over everything, like I said. Taking my son to school, leaving him there, movie theaters, driving in the car. Literally everything I think about in so much detail, it's not even funny. And because I have that worry, I just want others to know you're not alone. It's okay to talk about. I think that, if you want to look up that lady, juggling the Jenkins, she literally says it so perfectly in that quick 2 to 3 minute video about how to communicate to somebody else about what you were going through.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, even though, like, you can say it to your blue in the face, like, 6 times, I think that to share that with somebody else from a different perspective is...
it was powerful.
Yeah, I think it's just a way to be like, this is what I've been trying to say, that what goes through my mind. And I think that almost kind of like going to like a mediator. It's almost like, this is what I'm trying to say. And, like, hearing it from somebody else, you kind of get it a little bit more. Yep. So... just know that you're not alone. If you want to email us at, youngfamilypodcast@gmail.com, you can ask me questions. I will try to be there for you about how I have dealt with certain things.
Yeah.
Or we can just kind of be a support with each other as well.
Yeah.
But, we're going to move on from this topic to a little bit more of a lighthearted topic. But we just want to be real.
Yeah.
I have anxiety. Yeah. I deal with it every day. I believe that you are very supportive as much as you can be, and I appreciate that.
Again, I want to thank you for having the, willingness and the strength to talk about this in front of everyone that's listening. And I brought the idea to Carolyn to talk about this very early on in this new season of the Young Family Podcast, because it does affect every single thing that happens to us every day as parents raising 2 children together. So I was like, how are we going to have a family podcast talking about how we're raising our children without addressing the fact that you deal with anxiety? So once you showed me that video, it was clear as day to me that, like, we can't just portray ourselves as, a regular couple. Let's be very, very clear about what it is that we're working with, because it does indeed affect everything. So, Carolyn, again, thank you, and I hope everybody out there really appreciates the strength that it took for her to be able to just come forward and talk about something like this so personal. But with that said, we are going to take a short break, and then after the break, we're going to get on our high horse and talk about how we have won as parents in the last month, and our success of the week, which is getting our son off the pacifier, in this episode of the Young Family Podcast. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Young Family Podcast. This is episode 2 of the new era. We're back, baby, and it's 2019, and in this section, we want to talk about, we just want to get real braggadocious on that thing.
We're amazing.
We're just going to be, like, totally patting ourselves on the back and talking about our success of the month as parents. Now, let's put it in context. It was actually my mom, the Nona to our children, who listened to our episode, and she was like, you know, you guys portray yourselves as like these totally clueless parents, but like you've done some things right.
We do things.
Couple. And so she was like, you gotta give the listener like a thing that they can take away from the episode, like a little nugget of wisdom or whatnot. We want to give our listeners maybe a tidbit of information that could help you. And that's really what the success of the month is all about. We're going to highlight something that went well as parents, and then we're going to talk about how we did it. And if it helps you in a similar situation, then whoop-de-doo. But we always realize that everyone's kids are different, and we're not perfect, and, you know, so yada, yada, yada. Listen if you'd like to, or skip to the next section. But this is our success of the month. Carolyn, what did we do that we think rocked the house as parents?
Well, just to take it back just a little bit briefly, we gave a pacifier almost immediately after birth.
To both children.
Yep. So, our favorite brand was the Wubbanub.
Which is basically like a rubber pacifier with a furry animal hanging off the end.
Right. So I just felt that was the one that kind of took for both kids that was similar to breastfeeding or like bottle feeding. It it didn't cause any type of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we've always done gentle parenting. So we never I feel that I want to like rush our child from anything. We never wanted to be like over, traumatic for them.
Yeah, I think that characterizes it actually, is that we have always tried to avoid trauma.
Yeah.
Of like, this is your last day with the pacifier, deal with it.
Yeah, like throw it out the window.
Right.
Be like, sorry.
Cut it up with a scissor in front of their face and just be like, that's it. No more pacifier.
Right. So,
not dogging on anybody who does that.
Right. I mean,
you.
I mean, I know that people maybe don't understand like why we are maybe we're like too gentle at times.
Yeah, so people could definitely call us soft.
Yeah,
and maybe we are. In fact, yeah, we totally
we are.
We're soft.
But that's just the way that I am choosing.
We're soft people. Yeah, we just have to go with it and own it.
So I'm gonna commit.
Yeah.
I'm a softie.
Yeah, we're soft.
But, we went to the dentist, I don't know, maybe
he went shortly after he turned 2.
Mm-hmm. And so the dentist was like, he needs to get off it very quickly. And then, Riley was coming and we said, I don't really know if it's best to do it like right now. There's going to be a lot of changes coming with like Riley. Maybe it's, good, because we just like, I don't know, there was just like a lot going on at one time. So we chose not to get rid of the pacifier before
you mean as
Riley.
Parents? There was a lot going on?
Yeah.
Parents of 2?
Shocking.
Yeah.
So then I don't know, a couple months went by and Jackson somehow chipped his tooth.
Yeah.
And over the next, couple of weeks, I kept thinking, I feel that his tooth is dead. We need to take him back to the dentist. But I was like, I'm scared what the dentist is going to say because he's still on his pacifier and we never listened to the dentist and got him off.
That is true.
So you took him to the dentist. If you want to fill in, you can from here.
All right.
Just about the whole like dentist part.
So at this point now he's like over 2.5.
Yeah.
And the dentist like really gave us like the nut tap at that point. He's like, you got 6 months. He's like, if you bring this kid in for his 3-year-old appointment and he's not off the pacifier, it's your ass.
Well, he's basically saying that, like, his teeth are going to start to take a different form. We're almost going to kind of go into a path of, like, no return.
And then, so let's get into the real meat of the story, which is one night you were like putting him to bed and you looked at his front teeth and you saw like his two front teeth basically like going like triangular.
Well, yeah, but before that, like I was like asking like all my mom groups, what are some advice? What are some advice? What are some advice?
Of trying to get him off the pacifier?
Trying to get him off.
Because we knew that the pacifier was indeed having this effect on his teeth.
Right, but we again were soft, and we really weren't like, you know, we were like starting to like lower him from having it all day to like, you know, at school he only had it at nap time.
Yeah, we reduced a little bit, and I don't want to focus so much on all the ways that we effed it up in terms of like trying to get him off, because eventually we just did it, and so I want to talk about how we did it, because that's really how we're billing this section is like. We did it, and now he is, I think it's 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's about
5 weeks without a pacifier. The only time that he has had any sort of, you know, fraternization with a pacifier is when he steals the one from his, you know, his little sister.
He's just trying to get a rise out of us, I feel like.
Right, and then he goes into, you know, a hard-to-reach little, you know, like, cranny of the house, and, like... it sucks on the pacifier for a few precious moments as then, you know, we take it from him. And that also has to be hard, because not only have we eliminated his exposure and usage of a pacifier, but like he still sees his little baby sister having one. So what did we do to make the situation work?
All right, so me as a soft parent, I
Are we calling ourselves soft now? Like just like full on? Or I thought gentle was the euphemism for it.
Okay.
Even though we're soft people.
Even though we do gentle parenting.
We do gentle parenting. That's the way you gotta call it.
I lay with Jackson most nights as he falls asleep. We read stories, we cuddle. It's one of my favorite times of the night.
So what? You got a problem with that?
So one night, about a month ago, you know, we had been kind of talking about, after Christmas we'll do the no pacifier, and I'm laying there with him, and I kind of got this like glare, you know, from the nightlight, and I saw his teeth kind of starting to take that like
buck
form.
Yeah, looking all buck tooth.
And I was like, oh my gosh, and literally something went off in me, and I was like, buddy, you know what? Like, you're a big boy. Let's put the pacifier here. Let's just like look at it from a distance. And then I was like, if you don't grab that pacifier as you fall asleep, tomorrow I will get you a prize, you know, and then, so I walked.
You did it. You were the one who did it.
Well, I walked out of the room
and I kickstarted the whole shebang.
I when I saw the teeth, I literally panicked, and I was like, we there's no good time. We just have to do it.
Right.
We literally just have to do it.
For context, I had talked to Carolyn about doing some sort of like super elaborate, like, you know, weaning process that would take weeks, and we were going to like, you know, retire the pacifiers. But anyway, I digress. So continue.
So I walk out of the room, and I'm like, well, he didn't fall asleep with his pacifier. Tomorrow, if he doesn't, he gets a prize.
Right.
And you're like, we didn't talk about this.
That's
and
right.
I was like, I know, I'm sorry, but I saw his teeth changing, so I had to do something.
But
so
he did it on that first night.
He did it on the first night. So I believe that that first night, I believe he ultimately did grab it and did fall asleep, but
no. He grabbed it after he had fallen asleep the first time. So you watched him fall asleep without the pacifier. But then at some point in the middle of the night, he woke up and he was like, oh, hey, here's my pacifier. Let me pop that in.
Yeah. So then I started, you know, he had like 6. So I like kind of, so then I moved like 5, you know, out of the bed.
Yeah.
Over the next, like, you know, 24 hours. And so, you know, we only had the one.
Right.
And that whole next day, we just kept telling him, if you can go 24 hours without this pacifier, you will get a prize. And we kept telling him, you're a big boy. Like, you know, you don't, you know, it's time to kind of move on from this. And as a big boy, you know, who doesn't need this, you know, you can get a prize. Like, you know, you can, you know, be that example to your sister. We really tried to, like, empower him to not having it. And it was, like, it was really hard. But, you know, basically 24 hours went by. And we took him to the store, and we got him a prize, and we just basically told him the whole way, you are getting this prize because you are a big boy. You did not have your pacifier, and as promised, here is your prize.
Yeah.
And then, you know, some days were very hard. I feel like, you know, he kind of had some meltdowns, like leaving school. Like, he likes to have it in the car. So, like, some days were harder than others. So, like, a week would go by, and he would still kind of occasionally be upset here and there. And then we would say, you know what, buddy, like, you're doing an awesome job. Let's go pick out another prize. And we just went to, like, Five Below. And, you know, they have, like, all kinds of, like, just, like, small toys for $5 and under. But it was just
Thank you for shouting out that store specifically, because I was going to want to point that out to parents as well.
Yeah, it was just like...
Five Below is the best, because it's a store where you can literally let your kid roam free and say, pick out anything.
Even if it's junk, it's $5.
Yeah.
But it's like a way for him to be like, you pick it out, whatever you want to do.
And everything looks great. It's all still like super fun and cool looking and everything.
But
I'll tell you that I was really shocked with like how well he did immediately, but then how arbitrary his trouble periods would be. So, and by arbitrary I mean like, so, you know, on day number 2 of having no pacifier, he, you know, let's just say, for example, I don't remember exactly, but let's just say on day number 2, he drove home from school without a pacifier, and he really made nothing of it. But then, like, on day number 11, that would be an issue. So it was very arbitrary, like, when the issues would come up. It's like, he didn't really need it. But then at some points, he would remember, oh, shoot, I used to have this at this point, and now I want it. And he would remember and then throw a fit about it.
I feel that he had the biggest issues on, like, days that were hard. Like, days that maybe he didn't get enough sleep or didn't nap. And, you know, the pacifier was what he used to...
cope with things.
Yeah, like to deal with things. I mean, when he was upset, like, his pacifier was like his little, like, blanket, like his, like, you know, his buddy. And so... it was almost kind of like learning. He had to learn basically overnight how to put himself to sleep, like without a pacifier. He had to kind of get through a tantrum or a tough time without his pacifier. And I feel that that's why in the past month, I mean, going into our next section soon, with like the tantrums, it's like the tantrums have almost been harder, I feel like, because he no longer has his coping mechanism, and he is still learning as a 2-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old, how to get through these all these emotions. And
because by using the pacifier, what I learned was that suppresses the development of coping skills, of like internal coping skills. And so whereas he may have learned those a little bit earlier on, we, unfortunately, in my opinion, actively prevented him from developing those skills, because we would just be like, pop, and we just pop that pacifier in, and he would chill out. Well, so now he's in a stage right now where he is learning his coping skills at, you know, this like, you know, crucial 2, about to be 3 age, where, you know, hormones and everything is kind of like...
a lot of development.
You know, a lot of development.
I mean, also, when, you know, I was trying to tell him, you know, you're a big boy, you know, let's not try to grab your pacifier for, like, not, you know, bedtime. I would try to, like, put something in its place. Like, like his favorite, like, Chase stuffed animal. Yeah. I mean, or, like, you know, his baby doll. I would just basically be like, here, like, when you need something, you hug Chase, like, so tight, you know, and I feel that, I mean, now he brings one of those to school. I mean, that's what he uses for, like, nap time at school.
Yeah.
So it's just something that he's comfortable and familiar with, to be there for him, almost like a blanket or
I think that was helpful very early on. Like, in the immediate transition between pacifier and no pacifier, I think we really pointed to some of his favorite stuffed animals and said, use these as your comfort device instead. And I think he leaned on them a little bit, and I think he does still to an extent at daycare. But the angle that I really have tried to take on it, and I think I even mentioned this in the previous episode, was that I have been trying to emphasize the things that he can do that babies can't do. And so babies use pacifiers, big boys don't. But big boys get to watch YouTube. Big boys get to draw with
like have ice cream,
crayons.
Yeah.
They get to have ice cream. Yeah, we get to play catch with a football.
Paint. Yeah,
like just so
try to empower him
the
with
list,
like all
it can
things, like,
go
he
on
can
and
do.
on and on.
Right.
So if you are a parent that is going through this very same situation, like, utilize that perspective, because it's not a lie, and it's something that they can actually relate to, which is that, like, you know, you can do all of these things that you couldn't when you were a baby. So I mean, like, it show that very tangible difference to them, and you'd be surprised that it can actually get through to them.
And I will say, and then maybe we'll wrap this one up, but the last thing I would really say is, as much as we are gentle parenting and we try to do it slowly, it really was best once we really fully committed and kind of did it almost like a Band-Aid right off.
Rip it right off. Yeah, so if you think if we could, like, distill down the steps, would it be, like, number one, like, don't dilly-dally, like, don't wean?
And I would talk. I feel like we've always done a very good job about, like, talking to him and preparing him for, like, the next step. With really everything that we do, we talk to him like a real...
I talk to him way beyond the level that you should be talking to a 2-year-old. I'm like, I'm talking to somebody who's also 32.
So I would just basically talk to them, communicate with them.
Yep.
You know, pick something, whether it's a treat, whether it's a toy, a prize, something.
But incentivize is step 2, right?
And, you know, and stick to that. And then just you know, give them that praise. Like, always remind them, like, how good that he's
the praise
doing.
and the perspective, the continuous perspective of that, like, babies use pacifiers, but big boys or girls get to do this, and this. And, like, and then let them do it. You'd be like, yo, you want to dump your own ranch dressing on a salad and eat it? Like, yeah, you can do that, but a baby can't.
It's a bad example. Obviously, he put ranch on salad.
Yeah, but a baby wouldn't.
But maybe, like, well, you dump this ranch, like, on your spaghetti. Or, like, your pizza. Or your cantaloupe.
Right. Well, listen, a baby's not
kidding.
dumping ranch on any of those things, because a baby's drinking from a bottle and, you know, rolling around, and that's the maximum that they're going to be able to accomplish. But anyway, so that's our triumph of the month. And we're going to wrap it up. We're going to take our second break, and then we will hit up our final section of the show, which is going to be the thing that has not been so hot. And then we're going to give you some plugs of podcasts that we think you might enjoy. So stick with us, the Young Family Podcast. All right.
We're back.
We are back, the Young Family Podcast, and we're going to be talking about our third and final topic of the evening, and that is our struggles of the last month as parents. And Carolyn, what have we been struggling with?
Tantrums.
Tantrums. Which of our child has been having tantrums?
Jackson.
Did I say child? It would be children.
It's okay.
Okay.
Well, Jackson is almost 3.
Yup.
He is 95% of the time a well-behaved, sweet child, polite as can be.
Getting good with the manners.
So amazing. But in the last month, and maybe it has to do partly because of the pacifier.
Correct.
He has started to really have some meltdowns. And really, for reasons that I don't understand. Like,
Nobody
I mean, like,
does.
Everything, like, anything can just, like, set him off.
Yeah.
And he almost gets into this, like, blind rage and just cries and puts his hands, you know, in his eyes and just kind of has a few minutes, sometimes up to 30 minutes.
Or 45.
Where he's just upset.
Yep.
And
Inconsolable.
And almost where he almost just, like, acts out on, you know, you or me or, you know, whatever the case may be.
Let's be very clear on that. By acting out, the thing that I really want to bring up about this, because I don't know if this is normal for every kid, but I'm just going to come out and say it. He gets violent with us.
He gets a little violent.
He gets, like he will get like punchy, like kicky. And, I don't know if that's necessarily a trait of all the other 2 and 3-year-old children out there that are having tantrums. But ours does. The reason why we're bringing it up, I think, is because it's happening more frequently, isn't it? Like in the last
I'm just kind of looking
week.
for some insight, some encouragement. If you've had a similar like situation, when he is upset, I want him to be upset. I want him to express that he's upset, because when I'm upset, I don't want someone to tell me not to be upset.
Right.
So I'm okay that he's upset, but I don't like necessarily like him being violent,
right,
or him hitting. And it's almost like after the chosen amount of time that he has chosen is how long he wants to be upset, it's like a light bulb or something goes off, and he's just like, hey mom, like, hey dad, like, love you.
There are like 2 different versions of Jackson,
yeah,
and then like the one like so Mad Jackson leaves, and then Glad Jackson comes back in. I'm like, oh, you're back.
Yeah, it's like,
I've said that to him.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, and like I said, I don't want to say like the terrible 2s or like the 3-nager, but I definitely think that he is just like going through a lot mentally.
Yep.
He is testing his boundaries, with us. I don't think that he acts this way at school, but whether he's overly tired, whether he's just going through so much, it is just like, and some days after a long day at work,
yeah,
I am like, man, like, this is hard, and it really takes everything that I can, not to like snap out myself. Like, I have to just like, you can have a moment, like, I try to talk to him as much as I can, but sometimes, we just have to like walk away, and then say,
that's the hardest part.
You have your minute. I am here when you need me, and then we'll check on him. But it's just like,
well, you know what he does when we are not in his face acknowledging the tantrum that he's having, he'll seek you out, and then he'll try and do worse things to get your attention, so that you continue to acknowledge that he's having a tantrum. You made an interesting point that we have also noticed, that it seems like he does not do this in other situations. So how I would consider it is like, I think of like one of those little like graphs that you would make like in elementary school, where like there's like the central point of your project, right? And that's like the inner circle. So we're the inner circle. We are the central focal point of his, the people that are his caregivers, right? You and me. And then there's the circle that's just outside that, and that would be like his grandparents and the people that watch him at school, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do this as much. Maybe if it happens, it's like so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that my mom has pointed out that it's happened with her when she's watching him maybe once or twice. But with us, sometimes it's multiple times per day. So what I came to the realization of recently is that I think that it comes down to a comfort level. And I think that we as adults do this too. That like, you snap out the worst on the people that you are most comfortable with. Isn't that right?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's like, the people that you can get away with just acting a damn fool. And like, so we as adults are kind of guilty of that as well. The people that love us the most and give us the most, sometimes we will act the worst towards. And I think that the reason why is because there is a comfort level there. And so even though he knows the grandparents, obviously, and he loves them, and he knows the caregivers at school and whatnot, he is not as comfortable with them as he is with us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that we get the worst of it because of that, because he knows exactly how he can let all of his emotions go on us.
But my question to our audience
Mm-hmm.
is this normal? Is this acting out like part of the...
It's a loaded question.
Of the, the quote-unquote terrible 2s, or them being a 3-nager? Like, is this all, like, quote unquote like normal, or is it just like, again, like him just learning how to deal with emotions without his coping mechanism?
Right.
You know, I don't know.
Right. Well, I think another good way to phrase the question would be like, what's been your experience with like 2 and 3-year-old children? Like, you know, because likely there were temper tantrums involved in those ages, but like, what were they like? Were they on you mostly? Were they random? Were they on strangers? Did it involve the violent, you know, little mini assaulting moments,
outburst,
you know, that come with our sons? You know, so what is your experience with this been like? Because certainly no 2 cases are the same, but you know, it definitely helps to hear what other people have gone through in this department. And if you have something that you want to share about that, then definitely hit us up at youngfamilypodcast@gmail.com. And, you know, we dropped some advice on the listeners in the last section, so why don't you drop some advice on us? What do you think that we should do in our specific situation? You know, the kid is just as sweet as pie. So like much of his life. And then he just turns into Mad Jackson sometimes, and like he will punch you in the face.
It's only happened recently, but it's
right.
I think it's, and we'll wrap this up, but I think it's more challenging because it's so unlike him.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of like in shock because I don't know what to do. I know. And like I said, it's only a small amount, but it's enough to...
You know, I mean, to answer our own questions a little bit, the thing that I've seen that has actually kind of like saved him a couple of times from sliding all the way into a full-on, you know, hysterical meltdown has been just like outlandish, over-the-top, happy, like, antics. Mm-hmm. You know how just recently we've just been like imitating like people that he watches on YouTube and whatnot, and just like all of a sudden, like right when he's in the middle of a tantrum, almost if we can make him laugh, like we'll save him like from like becoming full on like Mad Jackson. So that's kind of been a thing. Maybe we can pursue that thread a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anyway, if you're listening and you want to comment, definitely email us or just comment right in the you know, the comment section of Facebook or YouTube, and we'd love to hear what you think. Do you want to move on to our plugs of the week?
For sure.
Okay, in the intro of this episode, I said we were both plugging podcasts, but then you got up to the line of scrimmage and now you're calling an audible. Is that right?
I am.
All right, ladies first. What do you want to plug this week?
So I'm no longer plugging a podcast. I'm going to plug a show. I'm sure most people have watched it or maybe have not, but we began watching the show Parenthood in the very beginning of Parenthood, literally, for ourselves. When Jackson was born.
How appropriate.
And we had long hours of feeding and being awake at night and just kind of like being at home, you know, on maternity leave.
We plowed through that whole show.
Because it's on Netflix.
Every season. Yeah, so we could just binge it.
Yep, it's on Netflix currently.
Yeah.
And even if you watched it before you had children, I think like you can appreciate it so much more by having children, because I just find it so relatable. It's a great cast. It's a great show. So that is my plug. If you're looking for a show to get you through, you know, just to relate to laugh, to cry, Parenthood is my vote.
I am a little bit ashamed that I am also endorsing the show of Parenthood, but number one, we did watch it in those moments that we will remember for the rest of our life, when we were awake in the middle of the night because we needed to be feeding Jackson, because he was like underweight as a child when we took him home from the hospital, or he was like, they were just monitoring him closely as to like how much weight he was gaining. So we needed to wake him up right every 3 hours so that we could feed him. So there was no nighttime. It was just every 3 hours through the 24-hour cycle, you need to be feeding him. So anyway, so those were the moments that we watched Parenthood. And, you know, so I'll never forget the circumstances in which we were watching the show. The other thing that I will say for it, because it's an ABC show, and typically I'm not crazy. I think it's ABC. Somebody fact check me on that. But it's a little on the on the cheesy side for me, but the thing that I will say that was expertly done in that show was the soundtrack. The music of that show just elevated every single scene and all of the writing and all the acting. And the acting and everything was pretty good, and certainly as parents, you tend to relate to it a little bit more. Anyway, I'm gonna give you a co-endorsement on that, even though I'm mildly ashamed that I liked it. I'm going to stick with the original format, which is plugging a podcast. I'm going to be very, very upfront and say I'm plugging my brother's podcast. And my brother, Justin Robert Young, is like a podcaster extraordinaire. So he has 11,000 podcasts that he does.
Yeah, he's a professional.
But I'm going to plug one in particular because I've always enjoyed it just a little bit more than all of the other ones that I've heard. Justin Robert Young produces a show called Politics, Politics, Politics. You can also find it identified as PX3 or, politics times 3. I think that if I could quickly summarize what this show is, in highly polarized political times, my brother does this exceptional job of really just having an objective look on American politics in a way where you're kind of just like looking at it from an outer space perspective and just kind of laughing at all the lunacy of it. But then at the same time, you wind up walking away highly entertained and highly informed with a political news breakdown that was not pandering to a political party base. And I think that that's so rare to find quality political breakdown in that manner in the year 2019. But that's not even the full reason. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I'll confess that I actually never really found a great time to listen to my brother's podcast, and he does do a lot of it. But recently I have started popping in earbuds when I'm rocking our youngest child, little Riley, when I'm rocking her to sleep. I can kind of put earbuds in and then put a robe over it and a hood so that she doesn't snatch them out of my ears, and I can listen to podcasts as I'm rocking her to sleep. And I've been listening to a lot of my brother's political podcasts, Politics, Politics, Politics. So certainly check it out, Justin Robert Young and the Politics, Politics, Politics podcast. Carolyn, what do you say you and I wrap up this episode?
For sure. And I'm just going to chime in real fast. I have not listened to Politics.
Yeah.
Because ironically, politics stress me out. It gives me anxiety.
Thanks for bringing it full circle.
Not a problem.
I have a feeling if you listen to it, though, it wouldn't make you that anxious. It's pretty entertaining.
All right, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Give it a whirl.
All right. Well, on that note,
we're out of here.
We're out of here.
Because we're tired.
Email us if you have any topics that you would like us to discuss for future episodes.
Or if you have thoughts on this episode, what's the email address?
youngfamilypodcast@gmail.com.
On behalf of the tiny baby Carol and yours truly, Erik Young, this concludes this episode of the Young Family Podcast. Until next time, everybody, bye!